You're listening to Infinite TBR, the podcast where we try not to buy more books. I'm Smack.
And I'm Gabby. Spoiler alert! We're going to avoid major spoilers, and when we can, warn when we're going to discuss a particular book in detail so you can avoid that part of the episode. You can also check the show notes for time-stamped flags identifying potential spoilers.
Good morning, lovelies.
Good morning.
Is it still
It's
morning?
not morning for
No,
either.
it's not. It's 4:30 where I'm at.
It's like solidly afternoon, even on the West
It's
Coast.
literally how I greet all of my YouTube viewers with good morning, lovelies, even though I almost always record in the afternoon.
Perfect.
And I usually post in the afternoon, too.
Maybe they all listen in the morning. So
You never know.
Great.
You never know.
So for
All right.
fans of Chris, we are Smack and Gabby with Infinite TBR.
Mm-hmm.
For
The podcast.
The podcast.
Yep.
TBR.
And they run a
Yeah.
podcast called Infinite TBR. And fun fact, Gabby is actually my cousin.
Mhm.
We are both from the Alongi clan. So she has to be nice to me. But Smack, you're not a blood relative. You can be as mean as you want.
I slid
You're on your
her.
own for that part.
I slid her a list of my mean comments so that she can ask all of them, and you'll just think it's her.
Excellent.
I'll
Smack
just
can be the
I'm a
mouthpiece.
little better at cursing anyway. It's fine.
So we dreamt up this collaboration. Chris came with us to Sirens 2020.
One.
Yeah, 2021.
Yeah, because they said that they were going to skip 2022, and they swore that they were going to be back for 2023, and they're not back.
It's gonna be back soon. Don't worry about it. We can live in hope.
That's like, you heard it here first.
They will be back.
They will be back. Just a little. I don't think it'll be this year, but it might be next year.
Yeah, well, one can hope. Yeah, for those who don't know, Sirens Con is basically a feminist book convention that we went to in Colorado, and we all shared a hotel room, and we managed not to kill each other. So we decided, you know what? Yeah, well, we can collab.
And they let me monopolize the bathroom mirror the last night so I could like do mermaid makeup. That was very
For me
kind of you all.
too.
Yes,
That's
true.
right. Well, you guys
benefited.
went in like actual cosplay and whatnot, and I'm just like, it's too much effort.
You know what? I didn't my first or second
Oh yeah,
years.
I didn't my first year.
But the second year I was like 2019. Yeah. I had like this nice clothing. I bought a crown to go with it. But I was
won a crown. Well,
I bought it.
Oh,
Early buyout at an auction. So yeah, Sirens they do gender in fantasy literature broadly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
so I talked about it then at that time. Chris, you
had just started your TikTok channel.
Yeah,
I had just started a CaFae Latte, which is about a cafe run by fairies. Had not been born. I was like just figuring out the app. I actually recorded a couple of memes, mostly like Percy Jackson stuff in the hotel room because I was in the hotel an extra day after they left. And a couple of those went mini viral, and that was really fun.
That's exciting.
So that was, let's see here, it was 2021. So I had just signed the contract for my full-length novel, Citadel. I was just getting started on TikTok because I was trying to build up an audience for that, and going mostly on book talk rather than writer talk, and it just kind of plucked along from there. And then 2 years later I was like, I actually know what I'm doing now. Mostly.
So it takes about 2 years to get your feet under you.
It really does.
Just generally.
So before we get much further, go ahead and let everyone know where to find you and your content.
Because we are going to be cross-posting.
Yes.
We'll do the audio as a podcast. And you're a visual person.
So for those of you listening on the Infinite TBR podcast, I have a website, cmalongi.com. Alongi is spelled A-L-O and is a Nancy G-I. It is Sicilian. Everyone pronounces it Alongi. I hate that. It's not that. It's Alongi.
You too.
Yep. And and so I'm there. I am on TikTok, c.m.alongi_author. I am on Instagram, c.m.alongi, and I'm on YouTube, which for those of you watching this on YouTube, you're watching this on my channel at CM Alongi. So just Google CM Alongi and I'll pop up. I'm there. And I also have a bunch of books. I know. I also have a bunch of books. I have a novella series that is ongoing. called Blackwing, and I have, as I mentioned, a sci-fi novel coming out in June. All of that is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and the novella series is available on Kobo for you Canadians.
Very cool.
So, if I think we're gonna dive right into either your novella series or your novel.
Yes.
Do you have
about the fiction?
Do you have a, and then if and when we have time at the end, we can ask some fun book questions about, you know, your
Cool.
like your fun reading habits and writing habits and stuff. But which would
Sweet.
you like to talk about first, your Blackwing or your Citadel?
Well, Blackwing's the stuff that is currently out,
Right.
so let's start there.
Okay.
Blackwing is a novella series that I am self-publishing, and I got the idea for that when I had COVID last February, which was just a cold for me, but I was still quarantining, and I was bored, so I asked my brother if he wanted to play one of our favorite childhood computer games, Diablo 2. And the whole idea is that you're playing this hero. You can choose a sorceress or, you know, a druid in Amazon, or a necromancer or a paladin. And of course, they all have different powers and personalities. And my brother and I were playing multiplayer. And as we were doing this, I was thinking, wouldn't it be hilarious if the necromancer, who's all edgy and dark and like anti-hero, was forced to work together with the paladin, who's like the goody two shoes. I get all my powers from God.
Edgy.
Exactly, very not edgy. You know, what if those two characters were forced to work together to save the world and fight Diablo and rid the world of evil? And I thought it was just going to be like a Diablo 2 fanfic, but then like the characters became something different, and then I found myself writing like 20 pages of world building notes, and I was like, I should just do an original story, shouldn't I? So the Blackwing series is basically gods hated necromancer. The gods hate necromancers in this world. Has to team up with a paladin who gets her power from the gods in order to save the world, which is based on ancient Greece and Rome. And it's really fun.
It is a lot of
fun
fun
to read too.
I
have been lucky enough to be part of your ARC team.
Yes. I've been shooting free copies to Gabby. Oh, we're almost done with book 4, by the way.
Excellent.
I just finished book 3 this morning.
No spoilers for that one. I haven't read it yet.
Okay, no spoilers for book 3. Book 1 is called To Kill a Necromancer, and it's the two of them meeting. Janua, the paladin, is like sent on her first ever paladin mission. She's like 21 years old. Baby paladin. She's 21 years old. She's level 1. She's just became a paladin last month.
And she has some very solid ideas what the world should be.
Yes,
excellent.
She's very much like, this is good, this is bad, like black and white, and like I'm gonna make the world a better place.
And the most precious thing about her is that she expects everyone else to abide by that exact same moral code, and is always thrown off when they're not.
It's like, it's so obvious what the right thing to do is here, people. Why are you? Oh my god. So yeah, she's thrown in for loop after loop after loop.
She's the epitome of lawful good.
Mm-hmm. Like, she really is.
As hard as you can be lawful good, that is her.
That's pretty much it. And it's really fun throwing her in. First, she's ordered to kill a necromancer that's taken over this small town. Things do not go according to plan. And then in book 2, she is starting to work with this necromancer that she's been taught her entire life necromancers are evil, they're corrupt, they go against the gods, but like she's like, I almost got killed last time, I don't have a choice here. And they're forced to work together to help this city in book 2, Het-Gareb's curse, which has been cursed by the god of disease, and with this horrible plague. Don't know where the inspiration for that came from.
Like book.
Exactly. And then in book 3, the Horned Guardian, they're following this trail because they've been following this trail to go against a bigger bad. And she's asked to execute a necromancer local in town, but he's only 15 years old. So she's like, I know. She's like, he's a necromancer. Yeah, there's a high risk of him doing something evil, but he hasn't done anything wrong now. And then
book 3.
This is book 3, the Horned Guardian. This is like chapter 1.
I just said.
It's not a spoiler. Like
No,
it
alright,
just
no,
it
the
happens
setup
in
is
the
fine.
beginning.
Yep, that's the
Okay.
setup.
This is Act 1, and then it kind of spoils from there. Like there's a magic
And then
forest.
the next thing that happened.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
Here's who dies.
Oh my god,
and
wasn't
then,
it awful when this
Oh
happened?
my God.
I couldn't handle it.
I don't know. I couldn't believe it myself when Janua decided to do this. And then before
Do
it
you know,
comes
in
out,
not in high school, in college, my friend had never read Harry Potter, and I said, "Do you want to know when Hermione dies?"
You're evil.
Which might be the meanest thing I've ever done in my life.
I'm delighted by how evil that is.
and I'm like strictly like, I'm one of those people who I don't like spoilers, and I hate spoiling it for other people. Yeah, because it's like you only get first chance what? Like it's one of those things where it's like, if I don't care about the story, like I'm never gonna get into Breaking Bad. I tried, I failed, so I don't
Oh
care.
my
You can spoil
God,
Breaking
no.
Bad to me all you want. And then it's like, but if it's like something that I want, yeah, but if something like I'm going to be reading this, like it's on my list, like I just started The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So it's like
that's
no
one of those
spoilers.
ones, yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
exactly
so
the
it's like,
same.
I'm arbitrarily picky about spoilers. Just sometimes I
Yeah.
don't mind. Sometimes I'm very
but
focused.
yeah, but like also like I live with two roommates, and one of them who has depression and anxiety wants spoilers. Like they very much like, I need to know. Yeah, I need to know what happens. Do they make it out okay? Do they die? Like what happens? They need to know, and largely it's for their own mental health. Like I need to know going in if this is going to be okay for me, or if I need to like properly brace myself.
Yep, that's what happened with The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy by Megan Bannon. I was reading it, and then I gave it to Gabby as a Christmas present. And she blew through this like 400 plus page book in 2 days.
Great.
And I had slowed down because I gotten to the point where like shit was about to hit the fan.
Right.
It's like
I have no idea what that book is, so like this is
kind
out,
of
but
like You've Got Mail. Have you seen that movie or know the premise?
It's You've Got Mail with zombies.
So
magic zombies, not science zombies.
They're like secret pen pals, but they don't know that they're pen pals, and in real life they hate each other, and so inevitably at one point there's the big reveal where they find
the big
out.
reveal.
Yeah.
I needed spoilers, and then I decided I couldn't do it. I'll go back to it at some point, but couldn't do it.
So.
No, that's kind of like, I've been with books where like I read The Girl Who Could Move Shit with Her Mind, which is like X-Men meets Alias, and it's hilarious.
Okay,
but
how was it?
Yeah, it was a really great book, but then I started on the sequel, Random Shit Flying Through the Air, and it's good, it's well written, but for some reason I just found myself with this reading block, like 2/3 of the way through, and I'm like, I just can't do it. I gotta
at that
save
point,
this.
It's hard to tell if it's the book or you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's me, because the book was doing fine.
Yeah.
There was nothing like, there were a couple of plot twists, but like they made sense. Characters are charactering, world is worlding. It's not the book. It's definitely me. So I put that back on the shelf. I will get to it later.
It happens.
Yep.
It really does.
So who is your favorite? I'm going to ask you first, Chris. Who is your favorite character to write in the Blackwing series?
Probably Antiku, because he's so much more sarcastic. Like he is.
That would have been my guess.
I know
he is a crotchety old necromancer.
Yep, he's an old gay. He's jaded, but he also has a heart of gold because, like, in his own words, I'm bad at being smart. Which, like, he knows the smart thing to do is just, move past this town that's cursed by God. He knows the smart thing to do is to let this young, impotent paladin get herself killed doing this other thing, and then I'll move it and I'll sweep it and clean up whatever mess needs to be cleaned up, and that's to do what I need to do. Like, he knows the smart thing, but his conscience won't let him do it, and it pisses him off every time, because he's like, okay, I guess you and I are just going to be storming up the fortress together, just the two of us, with no army, and she has a whole army of undead people that are going to rip us to shreds.
In some ways,
lots of fun.
In some ways, his moral code is like just as cut and dry and strong as Genoa's, but he's so mad about it.
That's the fun thing about Antiku is that, ironically, even though Janua is the one who's the paladin who gets her powers from the god of honor, Antiku actually has the strictest moral code out of almost every character. He has this necromancer's creed, which is basically like, don't be a dick for necromancers. And he follows that thing to the letter. And he's like, this is the morally right thing to do. This is the morally wrong thing to do. Sometimes the morally right thing is infeasible. You can't do it, but we're going to try anyway. So he does have this moral code. And as he and Janua work together, she starts to see it more and more of it. And she's like, oh, necromancers maybe aren't inherently evil? Maybe. I might have just found the fluke. Hard to tell.
And one of my favorite dynamics between those two characters is the way that in some ways Antico has kind of acquired responsibility for Genoa.
Yeah.
They've been traveling together
Where
enough,
he's
and
like,
he knows that she'll just throw herself into a situation.
Die.
Yes, very much
I guess
so.
this is what we're doing today.
It's basically, I'm writing this in the era of, Pedro Pascal and The Witcher, and it's basically the dad in it, he's the crotchety old man, and she's this impotent young thing who she's powerful, she's strong, she knows how to fight, and she's not dumb, she's just naive, and she's like, I'm gonna do the thing because it's the right thing to do. And he's like, god damn it, okay, all right, I'm coming with you, I got snacks and whatever.
And she needs snacks.
She does need snacks. She literally burns through the calories. But yeah, no, book 4, Ghost Peak, comes out May 5th. Mm-hmm. And then I haven't settled on a date or even a title yet for book 5, which is when I'm going to be, after book 5, I'm taking a break from it.
How far ahead have you planned in this series?
Far.
Gabby said something about 20 books, and my head almost exploded.
I'm a planner, okay? There's planner versus pantser. Hold on, let me get to the desk here. There's planner versus pantser. Planners are the ones who outline everything. And while I don't have like a hard outline for the next several books, I do have note cards.
Always helpful. That's a lot of note cards. Oh
and
my God.
some of these are like the first 5. Yeah, so like getting rid of the first 5, and some of these are like totally empty. What is this? Oh yeah, that's an idea for like a future book. That's the fun thing about doing a novella series is you can just kind of do whatever.
Yeah.
You can just put it in better. But yeah,
early,
these are the ones.
It's real easy to like seed future plot stuff. Like some of them I can pick out, and it's very exciting as it happens.
But yeah, these.
Hold on one second.
Yeah, sorry.
We're on the room above the garage, and so when the door goes up and down, like the microphone,
you can hear it. Yep.
Okay. So,
but yeah, no, these are like all of the notes for like the next several books. So there are at least. Oh, the garage is back.
Someone came home.
Yep.
Nah, I feel ya. I live in an apartment myself. There's no soundproofing. Whenever there's like birds or police or a helicopter or anything, you can hear it in my YouTube videos and even my TikTok. So
that's why we don't record at Gabby's place. I
live in the flight path. Kind of. I live adjacent to close enough to the flight path. She also
lives in like a generally cooler place, so they're like cars and people, and I live in the suburbs.
I was really jealous of Gabby because you're like 5 minutes away from the beach or whatever.
From the ocean.
Yeah. I'm technically 1 block from the ocean.
It's a very long block though.
But but it's the cliff. So like, you can see the ocean, but to get
the
to
beach
it,
is
the beach is longer.
Poor Gabby.
Jesus Christ. Okay, fine. Whatever.
Anyway, so who's your favorite character in the Blackwing?
Mine?
Yeah.
I was thinking about that, and I don't think I would love either of them separately as much as I do together.
Yeah. Together. Yeah.
They're perfect together.
They are perfect together in a way that I would not have because a lot of books you don't really have older characters. They're all 25 or Jinwa's age. And it's just so much better with a crotchety old dude tagging along behind to make sure you don't die.
Yeah.
Their dynamic is what makes these books good. It's just awesome.
They are really fun. Yeah.
Which one do you like better?
I think I agree with you.
Of course you do.
But as of book 3, I have a, like, not necessarily contender yet, but I'm very excited about someone we meet in book 3 that I can't talk about without spoiling.
That's fair.
Is it the Crow God?
No.
Oh,
so
she's mentioned the Crow God like 3 times.
I'm very obsessed with my pet theory about what's gonna happen.
Yeah. Book 5.
Book 5.
Excellent.
Book 5. That's all I'm going to say about that.
How long does it take you to write one of these?
So these were cranked because they're novellas. They're shorter. And I chose to do them specifically because they're shorter. I signed the contract for Citadel, a full-length novel, in 2021, and I was told it'll come out in 2023. Originally, we thought it would be like spring, but then it was like, oh, it's going to be June instead. And I'm like, that is forever from now. And I came up with the idea for this series in February of 2022. Okay. So and I'm still technically working. I just got some notes back from my editor that's going to basically be a wholesale revision of book 5.
Wow.
So I'm able to crank these out very quickly. Book 4, which we're tinkering with like grammar, was also another whole revision. There was like a completely different premise, and they were going to do like this murder mystery thing. I've tabled the idea for later, but it just wasn't the right time for this one. So that was a bit of a rush job, but we all really like, and the beta readers that I've hired really like.
3 or 4 novellas in 1 year? That's pretty good.
Yeah, 4 novellas in about a year, and then finished the rough draft and the revision of 5 in like a month.
That's
and
a
then,
very solid pace.
Yeah, but that's why also like I need a break after book 5 because I don't have book 6 ready yet. Like I've got it basically outlined, but you know. And there's also like 8 other writing projects that I have going on at once. And I'm just like, table this for now, and then I will get back to it, I swear.
Yeah, doing the same thing for too long. And no matter how fun or...
It takes a toll.
Yeah.
It really does. I recently just had to go on just a little hiatus from CaFae Latte on TikTok because I'd been doing it like 50 episodes straight, 1 episode a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was just like, and I was like, literally, like, I had the script planned out and everything, but I'm sitting there in front of my computer with the camera ready, and I'm just like, I can't fucking do it. I need, like, I could have pushed through that block, but I'm like, no, this is gonna...
Good for you. If I don't take it.
So I literally,
setting boundaries for yourself.
Yeah, I literally let everyone know on TikTok, hey, just an FYI, I'm just taking a little break from this for now, and then gonna focus on something else. And the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Everyone being like, hey, take care of yourself. We get it. We're a little disappointed, but we will be here, and we look forward to what's next. So
that's nice.
So while you were writing Blackwing, what are the easiest parts to write, and what have you found are the biggest challenges?
Well, the easiest parts to write would be like the world building, because I'm a nerd.
Your world building is great. It's also interesting. Yeah.
So the world building, the history of the world, Antiku's impromptu lectures on how all that works. That's just me.
Yeah. We got in the book 3, you get the series of like how the gods came, like the primordials, the nature series. You get some of that, like all that historical background. It was very cool.
Yeah, the kid necromancer that I mentioned is asking him, why do they hate us so much? And Antika's like, well, here's all the historical context. So yeah. And there's a little more of that in book 4 too. So that's really fun. The dialogue is really fun too, although I often have to go back and unmodernize it. So it fits. So those are the easiest. The fight scenes are pretty fun for me to do too. What's difficult for me is like often is killing off characters. When like, I can't do that. When like I don't like killing off villains. Like that's entirely. But like, you know, you keep wanting good things to happen to the good characters. Right. But the thing with good storytelling is you can't have that happen. Like, if you want fluff, go to fan fiction. I'm not here to deliver that. I need to bring pain. And so it's figuring out, you know, I need to hurt these characters, but like, do I kill this one off now? But if I do that, then I'm like completely nixing a potential future arc later. So maybe like I make them think they're dead, or like maybe I just separate them, or maybe I just introduce a new character and then kill them off. later, and
a lot
like
easier
it's a
to
minor
kill off new
character, so
characters.
yeah, it's very much easier to kill off a minor character, and if you're doing it right, like if you, I don't know if you guys ever watched Full Metal Alchemist.
I have not.
Not in a long time.
Oh god, yeah, no, it's a great anime, and Brotherhood, I should say.
Yeah.
Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and the manga that's based off, very good, but there's like a minor character who gets killed off fairly early on, and it just hits. Like, it's rough, and it like determines the course of the entire rest of the series too. And he's a minor character, but like you still really care about him and his family and the impact that he has.
So that's your
like top
inspiration. Good
tier.
to know.
It's part of the inspiration. Rick Riordan, who did Percy Jackson, that's another big inspiration because he's kind of like, as you may have noticed, these books and all of my writing tend to have a very diverse cast of, genders, sexualities, people of color, people with disabilities, autistic people. So like, and I am not all of those things. So it's like Rick Riordan is kind of like the inspo of like being a majority author, I guess you could say, with a wide diverse cast that is like widely said like, yeah, this is how we are. We can all see ourselves there.
The rest of the world. Yeah.
Yes, there's that. George R. R. Martin taught me how to kill people. So it's kind of
solid mentor
blend.
On that.
Blending of that. That's I pull from everything, really.
What was your favorite scene to write in the first? I guess in the first two. The first two, but
in either To Kill a Necromancer or Hedgarab's Curse. All the scenes with Hedgarab's Curse when Janua is going against the other paladin, and in Hedgarab's Curse, she meets another paladin of Jadim. So they're two paladins. They both worship the same gods, but they have two very different takes.
Very interesting contrast
on how to do that. So it was really fun to contrast this, young, headstrong woman with like very strict views of what's right and what's not right, with someone very similar with the very same background, but from a little more self-centered purpose. And
someone with more
whenever
experience. So like, it's not
someone
like
with more
just
experience
can knock him aside, which is
exactly,
what she would
and more power. Yeah, and more power than her, because he has destructive fire. Like he can actually do more things than she can, so she has to be a little cautious around him, but she's not a very cautious person.
Nope.
So it's kind of fun writing Janua in a situation where she's actually kind of right. Like in all the previous scenes, whenever she's going against Antico is usually correct, just because he is more jaded and also just knows more about the world and how it works and why it works the way it works. And she doesn't. She's, as we especially found out in book 4, she really does not.
Oh,
but in this case, in Hedgarab's, Ghost Peak was the site of a necromancer school, just an FYI. Whereas in book 2, Hedgarab's Curse, it's pretty cut and dry. Like, Janua's like, you are supposed to help people. That's our job. And this other paladin's like, no, I'm supposed to protect the temples, and I can't do that if we get, this plague was sent by another god. If I go against that other god, I am going to be putting myself and the temple at risk. I can't do that. And she's like, bitch, yes, you can. That's what we're supposed
almost
to do.
word for word.
Yeah. It's great.
So that's really fun with those two books, was having Janua be like, oh, that's right, she's actually sometimes right. And she is coming from a good place. And you really do get to see her shine as she's like, this is why I decided to do this, to follow this path, to help other people. And if I have to fight a literal god to do it, I'm gonna fucking do it.
That was another part of the second one that I really enjoyed, because in the first, like, her inexperience is what holds her back from like being able to take on the necromancer by herself. But the second one, like, she is very clearly outmatched by most, if not everyone, she's standing against. And like, there's an angel from another god that appears, and and that same necromancer who's clearly stronger and more experienced. And so like, it was interesting to see her like take a breath, try to do the smart thing.
You try to like Antico, she's just bad at being
burning her way through her problems.
And the third one ends up being a perfect follow-up to both of those in that sense. Because in the third one, she's in this position where she's the one with the most power in the whole situation, and she's put into this like moral dilemma of what to do with this necromancer kid and everything
and
else
the
that's
enchanted
going on.
forest and everything else. Yeah,
and there's a particular scene where like Antico has to say, she's like, "What, you don't think I can be patient?" And he's like, "Okay."
No, I don't think
no
comment. They're just so much.
They're so great.
Yeah, no, they're really fun to write, and it's just, you know, enemies to lovers is like taken over so much. It's like a really popular trope. But I am like a romantic asexual. I don't experience romantic or sexual attraction. So like there's already a disconnect for me there. But I've always loved friendship plots, and especially enemies to friends. And that's basically what we're seeing here. Like this whole thing, like it does get dark. It does get a little gritty there. You know, stuff happens. But at the end of the day, it really is just me squealing about the power of friendship.
Yeah. That's really all you need. You can be sad and do dark things.
You're nice to your friends.
Exactly. And like every single major character, I should say, with some sort of ability, be it paladin, necromancer, demigod, or anything else, they're all somewhere in the rainbow umbrella. And that's very much by design, because we need more queer rep, and we especially need more aromantic and or asexual rep. And I was like, I can't find it, so I'm gonna make it. So that's why, part of the reason why Antico is an old gay. It's a large reason of why Genua is an aromantic pansexual, as she discusses that a little bit in book 2, and then it, you know, becomes a lot more obvious in later books. Book 3, we meet a trans character. No idea what I'm going to do with, you know who I'm talking about, the gal with the horn.
God damn it, guys.
Yep. She's probably ace. I honestly haven't figured it out. The Horn Guardian, you know her.
Yeah.
Guys.
Read the book.
It's the title of the book.
I will get to it.
She's been very busy reading your novel.
I know. I blew through it in like 2 days.
That's true.
It's good.
Flawless segue. Let's talk Citadel.
Yeah.
The sci-fi book that comes out in June.
June 20th.
June 20th, and you guys didn't hate it, which is good.
No.
Actually, Gabby.
I mean, that's a nice baseline, but like we actually like enjoyed it.
Yes. Smack got to watch me.
I did. Gabby came over while she was reading like the last 40 pages, and we sat outside because it was a nice day until the sun went down, because she was like, the closer she got to the end, the slower she was reading. And I had shorts on. I was like, wrap it up. We have to go inside. And she was like, you don't understand.
And now you do.
Now I do.
Yeah. So Citadel, hold on, it's over here. Just pretend I'm way more professional about this than I actually am.
There. Got it.
There. Oh, good. You have one too. We both know what we're doing. Awesome. So Citadel is an actual full-length novel, completely separate from Blackwing, and a science fiction. And the short version is there are humans versus aliens that they think are demons, but are actually telepathic, telekinetic wolves with wings on an alien planet. That's it. That's the book.
Yay! And that's all there is to it. And it took me a really long time to read it. Okay.
So how long did it take you to write that one?
Since I was 12.
Okay. It's your
no
baby.
joke.
I thought like it's either going to be like a year and a half or like a decade.
Yeah, no joke. When I was 12 years old was when I wrote my first full-length, like 300-page novel, and I was so proud of it. And I made my poor father read it, and he did, and he gave me some really good feedback. It's like, obviously over the 12 years that it took me to actually get the publishing contract, it went through endless revisions and rewrites and revisions and rewrites, but you literally can draw a straight line from that lost manuscript to this. Like, that's Olivia was a character in that original one, although she was a side character who was there to like give him directions basically, and then she eventually became the main character. Surridge / Freckles, previously named Mouse, was there for most of the incarnations. He's also one of the older characters. Riley has been there for a very long time, almost always with like the final version that I settled on was chronic migraines that he suffers through, largely because my mother also suffers the same. But he's always had some problem that has kept him from being the traditional macho man. Usually he was blind. There was one version where he was like wheelchair bound. Something kept physically holding him back, and then in this one was like an actual like where there's a forest that literally floods once a week.
So cool.
And like I know the flooded forest that actually came from, there was this documentary I was watching, I forget what it was, but it was about the Amazon, the jungle. And there are actual freshwater dolphins swimming around in like the more flooded areas of it. And I remember seeing that on screen and I was like, that is like some alien shit. That is so cool. And literally like 3 months later, as I was revising Citadel yet again, I was like, I should like incorporate that into the world.
Let's make that the entire biosphere.
Yay!
It really, well, we don't see the entire biosphere
That's
though.
true,
We just see this little corner of it. We just see the flooded forest and this one human city plop in the middle of it.
I do really like how the farther you, like, it starts with just the Citadel, the city, and then a ring of like agriculture around it. And there was an explicit moment where they're like, we can't get very far, we haven't mapped the planet, we don't like know what else is out there. And then Olivia, as she goes to live with the chimera slash demon slash winged wolves, like she gets to see some more of the world. And I, as a reader, while she was going around being like, they could put a city there, they could put a city there, how long would it take them to get here? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's world building that was really fun. And you know, I wasn't a huge fan of science. Like I have a bachelor's in history and social justice, which are more the human sciences. It's kind of like, here's how batshit insane humanity is. That's cool. But in terms of like biology and meteorology and geology, environmental ecology, like I got like C's in that because I just had no interest in it. But for this one, I did some actual rolling up the sleeves and some serious Googling and YouTubing of like, there's this couple of great world building channels that literally broke down the science of like, here's how the distance of a sun or the different types of stars and suns would affect how plants look, how, you know, the climate is, and this, that, and the other thing. So like I did a lot of that and then forgot most of it and then just kept the most important bits.
Right.
And that's the world, that's Italy.
I was really delighted with your implementation of the planets. It was such a small detail, but the fact that the planets' rings have this effect where if you're in their shadow, it's like icy wasteland, and I just thought that was really cool.
We're gonna see that if I get renewed for a sequel. Yes, my agents are literally like, have a rough draft of the sequel ready by the time this comes out, so we can start pitching it to the publisher.
So you're ready, right?
And
you're ready.
You're totally on top of this, yeah?
It's outlined. I'm plugging away at it. Most of my attention is on the Patreon accidentally kidnapped thing at the moment. But as soon as that's done, then it's going to be Sanctuary, which is what book 2 is called.
That's
and then
good. That's a good
probably
title.
something else. So yeah, there is.
Do you think it's going to be a trilogy?
We're aiming for a trilogy. I'm hoping for more, if we're totally honest. Like, I can carry this for a long ass time.
For a while,
but if I just get the trilogy traditionally published and then go back to
whatever you want.
And then like, you know, if Blackstone Publishing is like, we just wanted the trilogy, like we have no interest in a book 4, I'd be like, well, I have a book 4, so
I have
doing
it.
If they publish 3 books, then there will be a fan base already.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the hope anyway. But for now, I'm just focusing on surviving the launch of book 1.
Yes.
And
how is that going?
It is going pretty well. Like, obviously, I now have like an actual TikTok base and following and social media following, who are really excited about it. So
you should be.
Yeah, we're you should be. So, if you follow me on TikTok, you know that I'm a big fan of like skits and like acting out some characters and whatnot, myself versus this hypothetical ableist, sexist, homophobic reader. Those are always really fun to do, but also like the characters themselves. That's going to start happening on my TikTok as,
Nice.
I literally had the skits to those scripted out and sitting on my laptop for months, waiting for us to get closer and closer to the release date so I could actually start doing them and
hovering over the
releasing them. Hovering over the record button. Let's go. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. The only like problem, so to speak, is that my social media presence, I tend to like doing funny, lighthearted, like even though I tend to go a little heavy with the CaFae
Citadel
Latte,
is
it
not
does
super lighthearted.
It's not. It has its moments, but it does have a happy-ish ending, but like it opens with
It's
the death
a
of her
really
boyfriend.
dark world.
Yeah.
It opens with
It
the
is.
death of her boyfriend, and then within like 40 pages or whatever, we also get to watch her mother die.
Yep.
Right?
Chapter
that was
3.
the opening.
Yeah, like chapter 3 or 4. It's chapter 4 is the
Okay.
flashback where we see why her mom is not in the picture. It's like, oh yeah, she was executed by the state 6 years ago.
And like we need to get all of that information nice and early, but it sure does set the tone for the rest of the book.
Yes.
And
It's like,
one of
here's
the
how
reasons-
shitty this society is and all the things she needs to fix.
Brace yourselves.
And one of the reasons why I struggled to read the ending so quickly is it's the type of world where you're like, I don't see how this can end well.
She said that like 8
yes,
times.
so much. There's just, they're only at like a couple of people. They're up against overwhelming odds, and it's just, you can't see how it'll pan out successfally. And so,
well, at least I was braced.
Yeah.
It didn't end as poorly as I was braced.
You're welcome.
for.
Mac had the
I was
wording.
really worried.
And
like an overwarning.
Exactly. And that's the thing when you look at social movements throughout history and all that stuff, where it's like, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen right away. It's
which
like
is what we
really
usually
the
expect
best
in fantasy fiction.
in fiction, exactly. Whereas this one is like, you've completed step 1.
Yep.
80 more to go.
Yep.
That's kind of the thing where it's like you're ending with this tone of, we have accomplished a lot. We've taken a major first step. This is huge. This is unprecedented in our history. But oh my God, we have so much farther to go.
Yeah. And I think it was perfect. I don't think you could have ended it any differently without it either undermining the entire story or kind of copying out, I think, of the message you were trying to send.
Yeah. And that's one of the other reasons why we really want to be renewed for a sequel, because now we've finished step 1. Okay.
Now we need
Step
80
2.
more books. Okay.
Exactly.
One for every step.
Yeah, right?
Give me that advance and I'll start writing.
Yep.
I do need to eat.
Show me the money.
So what was it like? You've talked a little bit about how this has seen a lot of iterations. What did you find? Again, we kind of asked this with Blackwing, but what were the easiest bits to write, and what did you find the most challenging? You kind of talked about the world a bit, but
I was telling Gabby this the other day, but like writing a long book is super different from writing novellas.
It is. It takes a chunk out of you, and it does take longer. And I'm a fairly fast writer personally, but it still takes me like 2 to 3 months to crank out a first draft of a full-length novel. That's just the first draft, though. It's the revisions that'll get you. But yeah, what I found myself stalling when it came to doing the flashback of killing off the mom, that was just like, oh God, I was really dragging my feet leading up to it and doing it. And then immediately after I finished that chapter, it was a breeze. And right up until the midpoint, and I don't want to do spoilers, but the Chimera does have ancestral memory, and they basically drop the earliest memories of the earliest Chimera in Olivia's head halfway through the novel to answer all of her questions of, we've been fighting you people for like 400 years. None of us really know why. According to our records, you struck first, but according to your guys', we struck first. The church says you guys are demons from hell sent by, and we're like supposed to purge the world of you to get into heaven. That's obviously bullshit. So like, what's going on? she's like really the first to cross that bridge, and they basically just drop the ancestral memory into her head, and that was a tough chapter to write because I'm just
Yeah.
like,
that was a really good midpoint too, because like you
Mhm.
read it and then she decides to change her location, which is like this a fairly large shift. It's a good midpoint to have in terms of the plot.
Yeah. Midpoint plot twists are really fun because they let you have a lot of fun in the beginning of like setting it up and then pulling the rug out from everyone's feet and the characters' feet.
Yes.
is really fun. So yeah, so those were the two most difficult chapters to like mentally and physically go through because of all the shit that happens in those chapters. And then the ending saw the most revisions, not in the overall tone, but in terms of like who dies and who doesn't die. There is a major character that I almost killed off. And instead decided, almost killed off. And instead, I was actually reading it through the villain's point of view, Augustus's point of view. And when I got to that part, I'm like, no, he'd keep him alive as a hostage. So
I knew it! I knew he almost died!
Yeah, and instead he's the hostage, dangled to keep Olivia in line.
I had to like rifle through my mental collection of characters.
Like I got to the point where he's injured and then taken as a hostage, and I was reading it. I read that part twice because I was like, I know what these words mean. I know how this went in an earlier draft.
Yeah, earlier drafts he died, and then someone else died, and then I was just like, no, that doesn't make sense for him to do. I want my villain to be smart.
I'm just picturing you sitting in front of a whiteboard with like magnets with each character, and it's split in half, and one side is stays alive and the other half is dead, and you're just standing there like moving characters back and forth.
Which direction looks prettiest?
I mean, that's kind of basically how it is. Yeah. And yeah, so I changed it up a couple of times, then landed on the iteration. There was a character who was going to survive. And then I decided, no, it'd be far more satisfying. They need a win. Let's have the Chimera tear them apart.
Yes!
And
I was worried that wasn't going to happen.
So yeah, one of the villains, instead of having like a bigger villain arc in book 2, I was like, nah, we'll kill him now. Give him a win.
Yeah,
exactly. And then there are plenty of other villain options to explore for book 2. There are plenty of them.
Yeah.
So yes, that was fun. Writing Orma, because Olivia is the main character and she is nonverbal autistic, which I have a little author's note in the beginning explaining that because it's not mentioned. Those words don't appear in the rest of the novel, even though I do my best to portray her as autistic. Because Citadel it's incredibly ableist, and sexist and dogmatic. They've lost a lot of their knowledge and history from previous centuries, so they just don't know about mental health and all that stuff. And that
was really interesting because even though they don't have the word autism or autistic, like they very clearly the doctors do all the same things they do with autistic kids in our world. Like, how do we fix them? Why won't they talk? Type thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because like Olivia doesn't need to be. And like, I'm going to preface this by saying I am not autistic. I am allistic. Very boring vanilla brain up here. But yeah, no. So like Olivia's biggest disability is Citadel itself. Like that's the problem. As soon as she goes out, when she's in the forest and she finds a way to communicate.
Yeah.
she actually starts to heal from her grief and is like able to like flourish in the forest with these chimera who like don't care that she can't speak verbally. They have a different method of communication that they show her how to do, and it works beautifully for both of them. And that's kind of one of the big things is like it's not her.
Yeah.
it's literally everyone else.
And everyone else. Yeah.
That's kind of a theme you brought up earlier, that you were going through earlier iterations of Riley and trying to figure out what kind of physical thing would hold him back. But in the end of the day, in the book, all of his difficulties come from his family or from the society that he's operating in, and their own biases and
And like getting
He's
chronic
still
migraines would be bad enough.
Yes.
But like it's the rest of the world that makes it complicated.
Exactly.
Exactly. And the thing is, like, chronic migraines are still a bitch and a half, and he will still be dealing with them in sequels, obviously. But like, a lot of them are triggered by stress.
Yeah.
And he's in an abusive home. It's very stressful. So there's a reason why they kind of dip off about halfway through when he decides to get out of that house and pursue his passion, which is being a medic, which in Citadel is a very feminine career path. It's pretty much the only career open to women that has any sort of respectability.
Right.
It's kind of there. So he does face stigma because he's doing a girly thing, and he is written to be, not really anti-masculine, but he's does not have
stereotypically masculine.
He's very much not.
He's reedy. He's not muscular. He's not aggressive.
Exactly. Olivia is stereotypically masculine, and
she punches
Riley
a lot of people.
She does. She has anger issues, and Riley is stereotypically feminine, and that was very much on purpose. And I had a lot of fun with that. But he also gets a lot of pushback from the other medics and the women in his life.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, because they see him as a threat. They're like, "Oh, he's in this is our space,"
and like automatically assume he's gay and just
and stuff like
very
that.
interesting, realistic reactions.
Yeah, and it was so writing Riley's point of view chapters was really. He's actually one of my favorite characters, hands down.
That really came through in the writing. Like, there's a certain deftness that the prose has.
Yeah, because like he is foiled with Olivia in many ways. She's autistic, so she has a hard time reading emotions, and he has an even harder time understanding like, why are you feeling this way? Once she knows, she's like, oh, totally understand.
She can work backwards.
Done that myself. Yeah, she can work backwards, but she can't. Whereas Riley is very much the opposite. He's very much a people person. He's very aware of political and emotional and psychological climates. So he's very deft with all that stuff. But he has this mask of like being not really perfect, but like kind of submissive, just kind of like, I'm just the son of the governor. Like, I'm just here. Like, I'm a little bit of a goody two shoes.
He's been taught, like, if you don't submit, you're going to get...
Exactly. You're going to get killed, basically, because he's useless. But even when he was putting on that mask, for 3 years, we find out pretty much right away, he's been committing treason and heresy. He's been
very quietly.
Quiet rebellion. He's a quiet rebel, and then learns to become a louder rebel over the course of the story, with Olivia as inspiration for that. So and it was really fun to write his journey for that, and his struggle of figuring out, if I do what my heart wants to do, like, I'll be able to help people, I will be happy, like, it'll be great. But if I do what my dad wants me to do, I can still help a lot of people. I might become governor. I can hit these high political and legal ranks, and that can also help a lot of people who really need it. So it's like,
I thought that was some interesting tension, because it wasn't just this simple, like, do I do what my dad tells me to do or not? It was, well, like, if I do what my dad wants me to, like, I may have a moral obligation to do that.
Might actually be like the morally correct choice.
Exactly. So that was fun. And then foiling their relationships with their fathers, Riley with his family and Olivia with her family, because Augustus, the villain, is Riley's father, and he is an asshole. He is, very controlling. I am right. You are wrong. You follow my lead, or you suffer the consequences.
Yeah, he's not just an asshole. He's like abusive to everyone around him.
Yes, emotionally and psychologically, and he's very cold. And I struggle with writing villains, but Augustus was like, we'll just strip away all of your humanity. It'll be fine.
Basically, yeah.
And then compared to Olivia's father, Ormus, who appears a little bit like that at first, because he is also a bit of a control freak. He's like...
And he's quite conservative as well.
Yeah, he's like, Olivia's like, I'm going to be a scientist. I'm going to run off into the forest. I'm going to do all these things. And Ormus is like, please don't, because I can't protect you if you do
that, like, because we got his point of view, like, I loved seeing their dynamic from his point of view, because she doesn't really like him. She certainly doesn't love him. And he really is attached to her. He loves her. He's very like she just can't see it when he tries to be nice.
Yeah.
And
He
so there's
tried-
this huge disconnect. And I was telling Gabby when he goes over to Augustus's house for like a fancy dinner and they use real cutlery and it scrapes against the plate, and he was like, "Huh, that actually is a terrible noise." Like,
That was
love
such
shit
a
like
beautiful moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
super precious.
Yep, I was looking up what could potentially set off an autistic meltdown in Olivia, and that god awful scraping of cutlery against porcelain plates. That actually came up in my research as like one of the main sensory
Really?
issues.
That's so interesting
with
because
autistic
like
people.
with allistic people, even like in movies you'll see like the very quiet dinner with the only noise is like the scraping, and that raises the tension in a scene. So like it's not just Olivia.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody likes that noise.
Exactly, and it's a little detail, but like, you know, Ormus and his second wife Asaya is, you know, they had regular cutlery, and then Olivia came to live with them, and they're like, okay, we're gonna switch out to wooden silverware because for her sake, and it was a little thing. So like Ormus is trying, he's trying to connect with his both of his daughters, and he wants
Evelyn
what's best for them.
recognizes it though. Like
yes, Evelyn is better at recognizing it than Olivia is. He's basically the epitome of he confused, but he got spirit.
Yeah.
and he eventually they eventually figure themselves out, and it's, you know, Ormus is really fun to come to because he's really complicated, and he has the positive character arc of, you know, finally able to connect with his family and let go of the control a little bit and trust them and believe in them and doing that, and it works. But he also does a lot of other, on the other side, the political end of Citadel, you know, he does a lot of nasty things too, all in the name of protecting the town, and he realizes his mistakes just a beat too late, and it's just like, oh, that's gonna come back to haunt me. And it will.
I did really like him though. Like he struck me as probably the best fictional portrayal of the military man who's like very like cool and reserved and conservative, but actually like loves his family and goes out of his way to like comfort them and be around for them type thing. Like that shows up on TV a lot, but like this is the best portrayal I've seen of it in fiction.
Thank you. Yeah, no, Peterson was also a really fun character to write too. The father figure for Olivia. He was actually based off of my grandfather.
He seemed like
our grandfather or your grandfather?
Maternal grandfather. Other grandpa. Yeah, a little bit of like, I respect the institution and its rules, but I also understand it's made a dumbass decision and I refuse to follow it. You know, the coarse, gruff, more obvious heart of gold type of thing. I just love characters like that. They're just really fun.
And they're an interesting contrast to each other too, because I don't remember for sure, but my impression is that Peterson has been in the military for longer than Ormus has.
He's older than Ormus, but he has been in there for
because
he's just a sergeant.
Yeah, he's sort of aged out of any more promotions.
Yeah, he's poor, so right up there.
Oh, that's right. Right.
He didn't get the jump to Einstein the way that Ormus did, who's rich. You know, everyone starts with, you know, 2 years of mandatory military service when they turn 18 in Citadel, all the men.
But to become an officer,
you got to have that rich education and upbringing, which Ormus had and Peterson didn't. So that's why, and you know, Peterson also has that struggle with authority himself, even though he loves his job and he loves the boys that he basically helps raise and train. So that's why he's stuck with it for so long. But like, he can't go any higher because he's poor and he basically knows more than the officers above him, and they don't like that. Which, by the way, is why our grandfather, Gabby, could not climb any higher ranks. He couldn't hide the, he didn't have the appropriate ass licking. Yeah. It's an Alongi trait, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't have that either.
Neither does my dad. It's fine. But yeah, whereas Ormus, he was ahead in life, and it also helps that he is kind of blinded and by the dazzle of authority, and it's like, yes, sir, I can absolutely do that, sir. I can do that, sir. And then his realization of the flaws of the military and Citadel itself comes slower than it did for Peterson.
But like, you still get to see that transfer from like what got him so many raises was that yes sir mentality and believing it. And so like to see him go from like
And it makes
sort of
sense from his
blinded.
point of view to be like, you know, this role and all these bones I've been thrown have provided me and my family with this privilege and protection. So we
He's the
should keep
captain. He's in
continue
charge of
buying
the
into the
entire
system.
military.
Yeah. But as soon as that protection starts to fall apart is when he's like, maybe that's not
questioning
as,
it.
Yeah.
very interesting.
And it's one of those, the whole blindness of privilege type of thing, because Ormus is obviously very privileged, and he's kind of aware of the privilege and the oppression, and like he's not blind to the fact that men have it a lot easier in this society than women do, and that's why he wants Olivia and Evelyn to act a certain way, because he wants what's best for them in this shitty society. But he doesn't think I should change the society. He thinks I should change my girls. Contrasted with Riley, who is like, this is a problem. We should change the society, not us. So they're a fun group of characters to write, and I can't wait to get into the sequel. It's going to be really fun.
Do you have a favorite?
I know.
How could it not be Olivia? She's amazing.
I know. Olivia is kind of the first thing that comes to my mind, and a good chunk of myself is in her, like the reverence of books, the fuck this attitude, like, and she is just really cool and fun.
So fun to read.
But I also do really love Riley and how his quiet rebel, and he's basically a pacifist who is like, I'm not going to hurt anyone. I'm not going to kill anyone. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. And if you don't like what I'm doing, either kill me or get out of my way. I got shit to do. Move.
I also
and
really
I
like
just love
Mekte. I will say that. Like
Mekte. Yep.
He was just so empathetically honorable, which I just loved.
The Chimera were really fun to write as well, because like they have this totally different culture that's what I was going to be trying to talk about. I was remembering.
We got there.
They have this totally different culture of like, you know, they don't have the sexism. They don't have a patriarchy. They don't really have ableism. They don't have any of that. They have their own problems. And that's why it works so much better for Olivia, but also that changes how the individual thinks and their values and how they view themselves. So Suraj and Freckles, he's super young and like happy, and he's like, I know that I probably shouldn't have, you know, approached this dangerous human kind of unarmed.
He struck me
but
as
I
being
did it
about
anyway.
Like 12.
10
to 12. Oh, really? I was going to be like...
He's kind of closer to 15. He is basically a kid, and then Mekte is the leader of his specific pack. And yeah, even though he really is defined by the Chimera honor system of like you have these 3 tiers of honor,
it was really
showing
cool
honor to your friends and allies, showing honor to strangers and neutral parties, and showing honor to humans and or enemies. And they're all very different, and they all like play into it. And it was really cool to see, like, you know, his moral struggle of like what I have to do to protect my pack and my people. But I also but now here's this human who's acting the way no other human has in 400 years.
And she's offering asking to put herself on the line. So what do I owe her for doing that?
Exactly. And so their whole relationship was also just really, really cool. And, you know, Suraj's family, because, you know, it's briefly mentioned that Citadel is also, of course, homophobic and transphobic, and that gets explored more in the sequel. But, of course, the Chimera are not. So Suraj has 2 dads. And it was just really fun. Like I said, I'm a nerd. So having the different histories and the different cultures and how they clash and work together and how one can kind of go back and forth between them. And, it's one of my favorite parts about writing. This is why I love science fiction and fantasy so much. You can just do whatever and it works.
Literally build a planet.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And decide who lives and who dies. I am a god.
So what was your favorite scene to write or to read, like after now that it's all out?
I don't know. The ending is pretty satisfying to read through, especially probably because it gave me just so much trouble with all those tinkerings and revisions. Some of my favorite scenes to write were the fight scenes.
Because you have a black belt, right, in karate?
Yes,
Does
I
that
got a black
inform?
belt in self-defense. It does. And although it's been over a decade, literally. But I still do remember the basics of like what parts to target and how to hold yourself and like what to do to get someone on the ground, what to do if someone has you on the ground, basic escapes and stuff like that. So that does play into a lot of it. And then we also did a little bit of weapons training, which informed a lot of the Blackwing stuff. Yeah. I had a little archery stint, which when I was a kid too, which also helped with Olivia because she's firing a bow. And then my grandfather, not ours, Gabby, maternal side again, taught me and my brother how to shoot guns. So that also came into play a little bit. Yeah, but honestly, anything to do with the world building was really cool, especially since it's from Citadel's perspective, like it's science fiction, it's on an alien planet, and you usually expect, these hyper futuristic settings, but that's not the case with Citadel because they're so hobbled. So much was lost, and so they're basically relying on what's around them, and they have a little bit of a jump because they have a bunch of knowledge, but it's on an alien planet. How much of that is actually useful and feasible? They were starting from scratch 400 years ago. So they know how things like clocks and guns and all these other things, they know how they work in theory. They have the blueprints. They just don't have the materials to
they don't
make
have the
them
raw
in
materials.
Mass.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I really enjoyed that. That was interesting.
It was actually my dad who pointed out that the type of guns that they used, it was different in earlier iterations. But he was saying how smelting is actually a lot easier to do than like rifles or bullets or whatever. So that's why the revolver was the first handgun that we developed, because it was just easier to make the bullets, just these little round nubs that may or may not hit what you're actually aiming at. Who knows? Yep. So,
yay. Is there anything that you want to tell us about Sanctuary or what you have planned for the future? Although hard to get into without spoiling.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Like, knowing
if it doesn't get picked up by your publisher, are you gonna go forward anyway and self-publish it?
Yeah, I'd have to double check the legalities of it, of like, what rights would they have to a sequel, what's barring me from it, or, all that jazz. But one way or another, a sequel is gonna be made. That's just fact. And in terms of the main story plot and what I can tell you about it, one of the biggest issues in Citadel was that the city is overpopulated, but they have nowhere to go because they're surrounded by the Chimera/demons in this flooded forest. So they're trying to find spaces for a second city, and they can't because they keep getting attacked or they keep getting flooded or stuff happens. In book 2, Riley basically comes up with the idea of like, okay, any human who wants to live out in this forest, in this second location you've chosen out can, but it's going to be under Chimera rule. Ooh. So the whole idea of Sanctuary, which is the name of this second town, it's human refugees basically, and Chimera from wherever, coming to this new place and building a new city together. Wow. And obviously,
Augustus
like a lot of people
isn't gonna like that.
No, so like obviously there's going to be saboteurs. There's gonna be people who like. Yeah, the obvious one. And then there's also going to be like, those people who are like, I want it to succeed, but success looks like this. And, other humans who are just like, I think that we should convert the Chimera to, our religion and our way of life. Then have us, and others are just like, no, the Chimera clearly know what they're on about. We should do it their way. And like, some of the Chimera, we get more into them. We're going to get some chapters from Sarij's point of view. And so cool. Getting more into how Chimera works and how their culture works. And so there's going to be some Chimera who are like fully supportive of this. Like, okay, yep, let's do this. We've been stuck together for 400 years. Let's figure out a way to actually do this peacefully. Some Chimera who are like, you all are nuts. Good luck. And other Chimera who are just like, oh, look, more humans to eat. So yeah, I know, right? And it's all this big giant mess of just like all these different people with all their different agendas, and how do we make it work, and like who lives, who dies, and like, oh yeah, winter's coming up too. That's a thing we need to worry about.
That's right. This was summer.
Yeah. Citadel took place like 2 months basically in the summer months of Adelaide, and then book 2 is going to take place right after that, but like fall has just started.
Yeah.
So it's going to be like Olivia and Riley are like, you know, stranded in the middle of the forest, like, this is a
Might get a little
problem.
cold.
We'll cuddle for warmth. It'll be fine.
I think you had a couple questions about the role religion has in both of her series.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was mostly just me observing the parallels between your novel and your novellas, in that both deal with larger, more, I mean, the novella is less so, but large world-shaking events or shifts in culture. And also that, like, religion is such a driving force in both of your works. Like, so is that a driving force in your daily life, or is that just something fascinating that you just keep coming back to?
Yeah, both. Yes. So I do consider myself a somewhat religious person, but I am it's hard for you to see, but I am a Buddhist, actually. Okay. So when I say I'm religious, I'm a religious Buddhist. I've been practicing Nichiren Buddhism since I was 16, so over a decade at this point. And that does drive a lot, but it also like means that, you know, organized religion as a whole is just so fascinating and such a mess. And it's
that's another parallel.
Yeah, and it's been a force of a lot of good in the world. Like, I'll be the first to say that I would not be where I am without Nichiren Buddhism. Like, it has been a literal lifesaver, but also it's done some horrible things. Like, we all mostly grew up with Christianity, so we'll poke fun at that. But like, you know, the Crusades, just for starters, and like the treatment of religious minorities, the Spanish Inquisition, you know, everything. It's so
pretty much whenever religion turns political.
Yep.
Yeah, whenever there are political interests, it gets dicey and messy. So yeah, those do pop up in my stories because I do find it so fascinating. And with the Blackwing novella, and we get more into this, especially in book 4, Ghost Peak, coming out May 5th, where there are actual gods and deities and angels, and like that's, you know, that causes problems. And so that's really cool to see, like, okay, what if we had like a global conflict and like, you know, Athens and Greece, but like the gods were actually a thing and they were stirring some shit and driving forces and, you know, all that jazz. And then with Citadel, it's not clear. It's science fiction. So like there's no, the 100-faced god is not going to come down and, you know, scold them for being bad. But like, exactly. So, you know, you have
but
people like Augustus. Yeah, but you have people like Augustus who basically embody all of the negatives about organized religion and how it can be used and abused as a tool for oppression and for war and for power and for keeping the rich rich and the poor poor. Like it's all embodied in him in that negative way. But you also have characters like Riley, and to a lesser extent, Asaya, who embody basically all the good of religion. You know, obviously he gets a lot of inspiration from his friend Olivia, but he also, whenever he's like particularly worried or sad or just in a tough spot, he always turns to religion for guidance and for help, and it does help him. And then you have Olivia, who's a total outsider of all this because she's an atheist because she was just hurt so deeply by this religious dogma. So she and Riley work together very well because for Riley, he's like, scripture teaches me to be a good person. It teaches me to, you know, be generous and to treat others the way I want to be treated and to seek peace of mind and to conquer my inner demons. And there's this scene later on in the story where he's, you know, just lost a ton of his friends. And she finds him in this little quiet temple and she's just, you know, sitting with him there for him. And she's like, okay, if this is what religion is supposed to be about, I can actually see the appeal a little bit. I'm still very much an atheist, but like I can respect that this is how Riley gets his head on straight because he's created this whole little peaceful bubble for meditation. Really nice yeah. And then it all goes to shit again. But yeah, so, you know, religion is a tool. It's a double-edged sword. It's, you know, helped as much as it's hurt, basically. And it all depends on the people who use it. And that's just what I've found and seen throughout history and in my own life. And so yeah, don't be an Augustus, be a Riley.
Okay.
Yeah, Gabby, don't be like Augustus. God.
She's so in danger of turning into him.
I'm trying, okay? I think that was more or less everything on our list about Citadel and Blackwing. So before we ask any miscellaneous questions, was there anything else you wanted to say about either Blackwing or Citadel?
First 3 books of Blackwing are available for now, ebook only. We are working on an audio version. They're all available on Amazon.
Yeah, what about paperback?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Not yet. It's coming. I do want once books 4 and 5 are out, I want to squeeze all 5 together into like a collection,
an omnibus,
and and do it that way. I refuse to produce the paper and the plastic required to make books when they're like itty bitty. No, I refuse. I'm gonna waste resources responsibly. Damn it. Citadel, on the other hand, comes out June 20th, and that is available in hardcover, paperback, audio, and ebook. So go forth and impulse buy.
Right now, you can pre-order it.
Yeah,
I know, right? It's gonna if you're watching this on YouTube, everything is going to be linked in the description, so you have no excuse.
We'll probably have links in the show notes, but hard to say when those show notes will be up.
Slow on show notes,
but
they're coming.
By the time they're up, it will be available, and you can immediately click and buy. So there we go.
So yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about that. What are the miscellanies?
Well, so I was just going to follow that up with, you had mentioned you have a lot of projects on your various burners. Are there any in particular that you want to mention?
Yeah,
I know about Accidental Kidnapping.
Yeah, Accidentally Kidnapped was based off of a TikTok series, a mini TikTok series that I did that was based on a Tumblr prompt. It is delightful. It's basically,
those are always fun.
I know. The Tumblr prompt was basically a Dark Lord, who, someone who has a reputation as a Dark Lord, actually has a moral code, takes in a princess who's obviously been abused, and her kingdom comes knocking a little while later saying, "You've clearly kidnapped our princess, give her back." So it's either give her back to her family or declare war. And that spawned a TikTok series that was that premise, and it was, like I said, mostly fun and lighthearted, even though there was murder involved. And it got
murder. It was fun murder.
Just a little light poisoning. It was fine. And that those 4 videos got so popular, and I got so many comments saying, like, is this based off of a book? What's the book called? Like, are you going to write this into a book? Like, where's the book? Where's the show? Like, what is it? And it was like, well, I am a writer. I might as well just freaking write this thing. So I knew that if I waited until it would be polished and like perfect and ready for consumption, that would be over a year from now and nobody would care. So basically what I've started doing is posting each chapter of my rough draft as I write it, chapter by chapter, onto my Patreon. And then with like about 8 different disclaimers saying, "Oh, this is a rough draft. It is not perfect. It's going to be revised and probably rewritten within an inch of its life. I already have several revision notes. Like the first act is going to get a complete overhaul, like stuff like that." But they're really enjoying it, so I can't complain. They're liking it as it is now, which is a good sign.
That's what that's called.
It is a success. Yeah. So the plan is we just passed the midpoint. Wow. So we're like 27 chapters in. There's like 20 more planned. And because I said I outlined this, and once that's done and everything is on Patreon, then it's going to be like, bringing it all together, revise, rewrite, give it to my agents so they can find a publisher for it. So that's that. It's probably going to get renamed into something like Kingdom of Starlight, but for now it's called Accidentally Kidnapped. So there's that. And then, speaking of TikTok, I also have an ongoing TikTok series that I was on hiatus. Hiatus is going to end tomorrow. I just finished filming. I just got to finish editing. CaFae Latte, which is basically Supernatural meets Two Broke Girls. It's a cafe run by fairies, and they get to deal with food service and Karens and fairy hunters and all that jazz. And it's been really fun. It's a lot of wish fulfillment. Speaking as someone who works in the food service industry, definitely fluffier and lighter than the likes of Citadel and even Blackwing. That is probably going to get its own book. I have said that once Accidentally Kidnapped is done, and once Sanctuary is at least rough draft and word vomited onto a document, then yes, I will sit down and I will basically do what I'm doing with Accidentally Kidnapped, but with CaFae Latte. and it will probably be darker than what is actually on my social media because I'm just incapable of writing something
Cozy.
actually light.
Cozy, yeah.
I can't do it. I can't do it.
For anyone who's listening and isn't watching this on YouTube and couldn't see the Tumblr she held up, CaFae Latte is spelled CaFae because it's Fae. Anyway, it's very funny.
Fae.
I had to make sure that was clear.
It was originally.
Gotta make sure the joke comes through.
I know, right? The first 2 episodes, I literally just called it Fae Latte. And it wasn't until I got a bunch of comments saying, like, this should be called CaFae Latte. And I'm like, you are all geniuses. Like, that's,
Live
why am I
feedback.
not this great? So, yeah, I am starting to take them from TikTok and upload them onto my YouTube channel in seasons, batches.
Mhm.
So if you see season 1, like the first couple of them are, welcome to Fae Latte, and it's not until episode 3 that's CaFae Latte.
Amazing. Okay, I think that's your content all wrapped up.
Yeah.
If we wanted to, the only other thing I thought we could end with were just when Smack and I finally recorded
The intro episode.
We just talked about, because the idea of the podcast was to get through our giant TBR piles, we talked about our reading personalities, kind of. But things like you talked about your attitude towards spoilers. You mentioned that this is more writing than reading, but you mentioned that you're a plotter instead of a pantser. So I thought we could just ask a couple more questions along those lines. What are your favorite genres to read, for example?
Fantasy and sci-fi, hands down.
Well,
every time.
sub-genres.
Yeah.
I will say, though, in terms of while I am usually in the fantasy sci-fi land, I will occasionally throw in a bit of classical literature or a nonfiction book because I found that hopping across genres helps prevent book hangovers and reading blocks. But in terms of subgenres, usually epic fantasy, that is fantasy that takes place in other worlds, not Earth. Earth is not even a thing. It's, your Lord of the Rings, your Game of Thrones. I tend to go for darker fantasy as well, with life and death stakes and all that jazz, but it has to have a happy ending. I can't really do tragedies.
Yes,
at the very least,
What? I wrote a
At
very
the
cozy dragon story. I can do happy endings.
Yeah. At the very least, it has to be a bittersweet ending, which should tell you all right there. That's also true of my writing as well. So you're never gonna catch me with a tragedy because I can't do them. But
you heard it here.
Either happily ever after,
not in writing,
happily
but
ever after, or happily for now. I do like urban fantasy as well, just because it's really cool to see how the real world blends with the fantastical. It's usually fantasy. Sci-fi does pop up every now and then. When it is sci-fi, it's usually really futuristic, really far out there. Nadia Corfor's work is really good if you haven't. That tends to be darker stuff. But yeah, stuff like that. Post-apocalypses. Fun fact, Citadel was originally a post-apocalypse on Earth before I moved it to an alien
I was
planet.
it still is sort of post-apocalypse.
Yeah, no, but on Earth, Olivia was literally, shuffling through the ruins of Washington, D.C. in some of the earlier iterations. So yeah, that tends to be, either young adult or new adult, bouncing back and forth between those two. I don't really care. Yeah, if it's dark, if it's epic fantasy, if the main character is a minority, so woman or queer or person of color or neurodivergent or disabled or something like that, then that's going to catch my attention right away. I'm so sick and tired of books that, center around the default, quote unquote, this neurotypical cishet white dude. You have billions of stories to choose from there.
Yep. Yeah, there's so many.
So many.
I'm just thinking,
I don't actually know the last time
you did read.
Yeah.
It's funny, once you go out of your way to
Yeah.
kind of avoid it,
it's actually super easy to do.
Yeah, it's not that hard.
Yeah, it's usually the last time I do that was my last thing with the classics, I think, which I think was Count of Monte Cristo, although you could argue that the main character of that one is black.
Right.
Or at least mixed race, because, Alexandre Dumas was black.
So favorite, won't necessarily make you pick a favorite author unless you have one, offhand, but if you want to, you already mentioned Nnedi Okorafor.
Nnedi Okorafor and Rick Riordan and George R. R. Martin.
Okay. Just want to make sure you hit all the favorites that you wanted to hit. When you read books, do you prefer hard, or not hardcover, but hard physical copies,
yeah,
ebooks,
always the
or audio?
Yeah,
okay,
always the
Do you
physical
do
copy. Like I respect people who listen to audiobooks. Like I totally get it. That is a valid version of reading. That's totally fine. I just can't do it. It's literally in one ear and out the other for me. Yeah. I just can't absorb information like that. I'm very visual. And while I could, I know ebooks are cheaper and all that stuff, but like I spend so long staring at a screen already, writing books and doing the video editing stuff and all the other things. I can't.
Yeah.
Just want something
for my leisure time. Yes, for my leisure time, I need something. And also, like, my bookshelf is like right there, and it's so
what you were
satisfying.
Looking at when you were looking at?
Yeah, when I was looking at my books and I thought it's so satisfying to just.
Doesn't it just fill your heart with joy to
It really does to see the book, see my pretties.
She gets it. She does. How do you travel with books when you go on vacation?
So obviously you have whatever book you're currently reading, right?
Yes.
And then, it doesn't matter how far into that book you are, whether you've just started it or whether you're almost done with it. Because if you just started it, like, you don't know if you're actually going to, like, finish it. Because something could happen, or you could just not mesh with it, and it could be
Why
a DNF.
Are you looking at me?
So you absolutely have to have a backup book. You need at least 2 books when you're out on vacation. And if you're going to be on vacation for a while, like 3 weeks or whatever, or even a month, I'm not as fast of a reader as I used to be, especially since I've started doing writing as a career. Like, I just don't have the mental bandwagon for it as I used to. So it usually takes me at least a week to read through at least one book. But, depending on how far into that first book I already am or how long I'm on vacation, I might have a second backup book. However, you still have to have room in your bag because, of course, you're going to hit the bookstore while you're on vacation. So you need to have room for the books that you're bringing back. So
that's what your carry-on is for.
Yeah. Exactly. One backup book is probably all that you need because you are going to hit a bookstore, whether that's in the town or in the airport. You're going to hit it.
But you travel with the hard copies of your books. You don't usually.
Even if it's a hardcover?
Yes.
Oh my god.
That makes it more durable. That's even better. Then you're not worried about dropping it or it, like, or messing around with other stuff in your bag if it gets bumped or like the cover's not going to get hurt. It's gonna take it.
I am very particular about how pristine I keep my book. Even like I can't travel with hardcovers because like the dust jacket gets mixed up and the little like edges of the binding on the spine. Like I travel with ebooks. There's a reason I travel with ebooks. I can't.
And that's totally valid. Like all forms of reading are valid.
Obviously,
I get it.
We respect your
Moving on.
Also, like the more books you carry with you, the stronger you get. You don't feel guilty about missing the gem.
Yeah,
there is that. Yeah,
because you were busy buying books.
It is cheaper than a gym membership.
Yeah,
usually.
So there you go.
Depends on the gym.
Oh, what do you do with your TBR? Speaking of Infinite TBR.
Yeah. How do you organize your books?
So all of my books are on basically one of 2 shelves. Mm-hmm. Like there's a shelf that has like my nonfiction stuff and my shelf for my fiction stuff. And they're organized by author, regardless of whether I've read them or not.
Okay.
Very cool.
They're just all there. And then although with the fiction stuff, there is one shelf that's dedicated specifically to classics. Because every now and then I'll just feel the need for a good classic. I don't want to do a sci-fi fantasy. So like that just makes it easier.
Palette cleanser.
Yeah, the palette cleanser. But everything else is alphabetized by author's last name. And then whenever I'm in the mood for a new book, time to do something off my TBR pile, I literally just browse my shelf. Sometimes I'll know like right ahead, like, I really want to read this specific book, or I really want to read this specific genre, or like I've read adults for the last 5 books. Let's go something new adult or young adult. But also sometimes I'm just like, yeah, this looks good. It's been on my shelf for a while.
And they all fit on your shelf?
I know, that was my next question.
For how
now,
much longer?
It's getting dicey. There's a reason why I have 2 bookshelves. Although it's actually like 2.5 technically. We got one of those shelf things that also has like the cloth drawers, so like you can kind of put anything on there
like
to
books.
save space. But I share that with my roommates. There's not a whole lot of room on it. And we're all bookworms.
Oh, okay.
Do you share?
Yeah. There's a 3rd bookshelf that's built into the apartment that belongs to my roommate. So
okay.
But I don't share my bookshelf.
Is there room for
that's what I was asking.
Is there room for another bookshelf? Maybe. Like I might have one like, oh no, the air conditioner's right there. Maybe if it was a short one, like here.
Okay.
Like
nice little.
My roommate's shaking her head at me. No.
Absolutely not.
Oh yeah, the heater's there. That's a problem.
Dang it!
That would.
Do you need to be kept warm?
In Minnesota, you just said it's 80. You're fine.
Yeah, it's 80. You're fine.
I mean, yeah, now in summer, but come at us again
Tomorrow.
in January.
Yeah.
Can you read more than one book at a time? Are you a dual
Not
wielder?
really. No, I used to be able to do that, but I can't do it anymore. Like the closest I've gotten recently was like I was in a book slump, which I hated. And I just couldn't do it. And then for some reason, my brain fixated on a book that I'd already read, Scythe, the Scythe series.
By Neil Schuster.
It's science fiction. Yes, that one. And I just fixated. So I started to reread book 1, and then I went shopping for something else entirely. And of course, I bought a book, and that was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And currently starting to reread the old favorite got me in the mood to start reading a new book. So I'm technically reading 2 at once, although I think I'm just going to put Scythe back on the shelf. It's done its job. It served its purpose. It got me out of the slump.
And you've read it before, so it's not like you're...
Oh yeah, I've read all 3 books.
Under what circumstances do you DNF? Like we have kind of like 100
pages or halfway through.
Yeah, depending on
enjoying it, then
Yeah, no, for me, if I'm like a third of the way through and I'm still not connecting with any of the characters, or if I can like foresee everything happening in the plot and not in a good way, that's pretty much a DNF. I was telling you earlier it's a good book. It's a sequel to The Girl Who Could Move Shit with Her Mind, which is basically secret superheroes, working for the government.
Who's that by?
And the sequel, I can't see, there's a little ornament in the way. But yeah, the sequel, Random Shit Flying Through the Air, I'm like 3/4 of the way through that, and for some reason I just couldn't, like that's when the reading slump started.
Like serious, like if you're not enjoying it.
And I was enjoying it, that's the thing, but my brain was just not braining with it. Like the characters were charactering, the world was worlding, the plot was plotting. Like it's a good book. It is not the book's problem here. I'm clearly the problem with this one. So at this point, it's like put it back on the shelf. Clearly, I need to be in a better headspace to properly do it. But for the most part, if I start a book, I'm gonna finish it.
Okay. So you don't find yourself doing that much anyway.
No. In fact, Moby Dick was the closest DNF.
By Herman Melville.
By Herman Melville, because God, I came so close to DNFing it so many times because it's a 600-page book. I was reading the adult
version. Is it 600? I had no idea it was that long. I thought it was like a 300-page book.
It should just be 300 pages, yes. All right, Smack? It should be 300, but it's not. Wow. It's 600 pages, only 300 of it is necessary, and the other 300 is basically like, here's how the ship works. Here's how whaling works. Here's a history
That's how
of
long
whales.
The absolute book is.
It's like, oh God.
Okay.
And it's like, none of this matters. None of it is important for the plot. It's basically read like an article, and it's just like so and by then I was like, I'm halfway through this thing. It's a classic. I'm gonna finish it, and I'm going just to say that I finished it.
Nope.
But at the most part,
Was it
honestly, I was
worth
kind of
it?
like skimming through.
Yeah, that's the real question.
I mean, I
Not
was
really.
skimming
Should you
through
have?
a lot of the chapters by the end there, waiting for the plot to actually happen.
I'm just gonna
I feel
interject
like I
here
should be
real quick. The girl
compensated
who
for my time.
I'm gonna interject here real quick. The Girl Who Could Move Shit with Her Mind is by Jackson Ford. We keep a list.
That's what it
in our
is.
show notes.
There you go. Makes sense. Yep. And it is a good book. I do recommend that one. That is like
That is worth
9
your
out
time.
of 10 for me.
Wow.
Yes. The Girl Who Could Move Shit with Her Mind and the sequel, Random Shift Flying Through the Air, and there's like 2 others. It's like a 4-book series at this point. So yeah, they are good. They're hilarious. The main character is a dumbass. It's great. It takes a lot of skill to convincingly write a stupid character. Like, it's
that you're willing
in
to
a way that's endearing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, an endearingly stupid character. Like
A little dum-dum.
Yep. Sweet little dum-dum.
Yep.
What are you gonna do next?
Yep. So it's rare for me to DNF, mostly because of pride. Like, I started this thing, by God, I'm gonna finish it.
I can understand that.
Amazing. I think that was all of our ITBR questions. Anything else you want to say to send off?
Buy my books or my merch.
Heck yeah.
I've got both.
Thank you for coming on. This was Chris Alongi. Pen name is CM Alongi. And here's hoping on June 20th of this year you
pick
come
up
out
an excellent book.
Exactly.
An excellent particular book.
I'll put you down as ARC readers. You know, tell me all the things I did wrong.
Yes. This has been another episode of Infinite TBR. You can find us on our Twitter at Infinite TBR.
And we are individually on Twitter as @WhatSmackSaid and @Gabalodon, which is like Megalodon, but Gab in the front of it. And you can find all our show notes at InfiniteTBR.com. If you have book recommendations for us or questions you want answered during the podcast, feel free to email us at itbrshelf@gmail.com.